On this Monday night, where did the summer go?
Are you excited about going back to school tomorrow?
A little.
Come on, be honest.
Excited or not, school is back in full swing tomorrow. We caught up with some kids enjoying the last sip of summer. Plus,
I took these pictures years back because I knew that that an era was ending, and it's a shame that these are going.
farewell to a Toronto icon. The TTC pulls the last of its 30-year-old bendy streetcars from service. And how a tragic fire couldn't melt the future of this ice cream factory. We'll tell you how the turnaround at Chapmans is being taught in business schools. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise, and just like that, the summer break is over. We're just hours away from school buses reappearing on our roads, school bags and lunches needing to be packed, and yes, of course, homework. Our Greg Ross caught up with some unenthusiastic kids at the X today.
Elijah Tomlinson spent the last day of his summer break winning prizes on the Midway. He starts grade 4 tomorrow.
What did you win there?
A poo emoji.
Oh, okay. Is that kind of how you feel about having to go back to school tomorrow?
Yes.
Tomlinson was not alone in that sentiment.
I personally don't like school. It's not like my favorite thing, so.
Henry Stein may not be looking forward to the start of a new school year, but his dad Jared is.
And Dad's over there. He's smiling. He's so happy. Thank God.
He's taking happiness on my sadness.
Fortunately, the X provides plenty of distractions for kids, like the food.
What do you got there?
Cotton candy.
Are you getting any of that in your mouth?
Yeah.
Jalen Stevenson kept his focus on the rides today. The scarier, the better.
It helps me keep my mind off of school, especially.
Rob Macaron and his two kids came in from Oakville on the GO train with their bikes.
The Hornet, ladies and gentlemen!
First, they watched the air show and then went for a bike ride along the waterfront.
Great day for the family and see some planes, and wonderful day for bike riding.
Paige Daly didn't want the day to end, but at the very least, she's hoping to keep her face paint on an extra day to show it off to her new classmates in senior kindergarten.
Would you rather just not wash your face and leave that on for school tomorrow?
Leave that on.
Leave it on? What do you think of that, Mom? Could you just leave that on for school tomorrow?
I don't know about that.
In addition to the tens of thousands of people that were here for Labor Day, organizers are estimating that 1.5 million people will have crossed through the gates here at the exhibition during the 18 days that it was open. That's a 5% increase from last year. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, thousands of workers also gathered at the CNE today for the 125th Labor Day parade earlier today. Now, among them were some education support workers who warn they are currently taking strike votes.
That is something that we hadn't hoped to need to do, but it's come to pass that we do need to do it.
Now, the union represents custodians, education assistants, secretaries, librarians, and more. Now, Walton there says the union has been bargaining for 2 weeks, but it has reached a stalemate. The Labour Minister says he is trying to strike a balance.
My approach to Labour is to be fair and responsible. So fair to workers, responsible to taxpayers, and where we can find common ground, I want to work together with Labour across the province.
Oh, while it is back to school tomorrow for most GTA students, hundreds of downtown students who are hoping to start in a brand new building will have to wait a little longer. 2 schools sharing a new building in the City Place neighborhood just north of Fort York were supposed to open tomorrow, but construction delays caused by strikes involving several trades working on the project means both Bishop McDonald Catholic Elementary School and John Lum Public School won't open until January. Right now, students and teachers are being temporarily housed at Nelson Mandela Public School and St. Mary Elementary School. Meanwhile, a community center and child care center that are also part of that project won't be completed until spring. The TDSB says though the delays are outside its control, it is apologizing for the inconvenience. Meteorologist Nick Sirkovich joins us now with his all-important back-to-school forecast.
Yeah, a lot of kids looking at this one here, Mike. Summer slowly inching its way out. The sort of unofficial end of summer is the Labor Day weekend, and we're going to start to see a bit of a change in the weather here. Seasonal temperatures for tomorrow, however, in the long range, we are looking at temperatures dropping And there is some rain to talk about for tomorrow as well. We'll start with the rain, and it doesn't really affect the kids tomorrow so much. It's more toward tomorrow evening. By tomorrow morning, a cloudy start to the day for you as you head out to school tomorrow afternoon. Maybe a few spotty showers, but really it's not until about 10 p.m. where rain starts to move into the GTA. Your forecast then for tomorrow looks like this. 12 degrees tonight, so a bit of a cool start to the day tomorrow. Maybe a few mist and fog patches. Tomorrow, though, 24 degrees, so that's a pretty good-looking day. However, as I said, temperatures are dropping a little bit. Full details coming up in a bit.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
You bet.
It's been a rough start to the school year for several Ryerson and U of T students. That's after an overnight fire forced hundreds of them to flee a residence in the middle of the night. The flames destroyed a neighboring heritage building on Jarvis. Shannon Martin has the latest on the investigation.
It was around midnight when firefighters were in the thick of it, flames shooting from the roof of this two-story heritage home at 314 Jarvis. A big crowd gathering, many in their pajamas, University of Toronto and Ryerson students who only moved in hours earlier.
And I saw a couple embers and I heard like fire trucks, so I looked out the window and I saw that building just engulfed in flames. Like half the building didn't even see it. They thought it was a drill. But I was like yelling, I'm like, no guys, it's like a real thing. Like, let's hurry down the stairs.
It was really like frantic, but some people were scared, so everyone was kind of screaming and yelling a little bit. And I heard some people say run, some people say, oh, there's a big ass fire outside.
Crews quickly got the flames under control despite facing a number of structural challenges. The heritage home, built in 1865 and once owned by a prominent Toronto family, has long been abandoned. It caught fire at least twice in recent years, including in 2016.
They boarded up the porch. They were basically squatting there.
It's an ongoing issue, with Toronto Fire regularly doing inspections to make sure the home was properly boarded up. The last time they were here, this past July.
Most of the roof was gone on this building to begin with, so as you can see, it's been relatively secured with plywood, but doesn't keep everybody out, so at this time we have no idea what the cause of the fire was.
There's no evidence anyone was inside during the fire, but fire crews won't know that for sure until they can get inside. They won't be able to do that until heavy equipment arrives tomorrow on scene and their investigative work can continue. Shannon Martin, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, after 30 years on the road, Toronto's classic long and bendy streetcars are no more. As the TTC moves to replace its fleet with newer Bombardier models, it took the last two of its older articulated models out of service. This Mukta Gebrselassie tells us it invited the public to hop on board for one last free ride.
There it goes, part of Toronto's history, the classic bendy streetcar. Waiting patiently for his spot on its last ride was Greg Greenough.
I just like the old streetcars. They're way better than the new streetcars. They're a nice, soft, like cloud ride. So it's nice and comfy. They have that smell to it that reminds you of the good old days of your youth.
The technical term for them is ALRV, Articulated Light Rail Vehicle. They first hit Toronto streets in 1988. From 52, now there are only two, and this is the end. Their final runs took them in both directions of Queen Street, from Greenwood to Bathurst.
All right, guys, it's time to go on for the last ride, and it's free.
It seems many Torontonians took the TTC up on its offer.
We are actually new incomers of this city, but I've always liked the design of this car, and I like the front head, the way the feel reminds me of the old days.
It's a new day for Shannon Road, who went on for the first time.
I'm sad that it's going away. I want to ride on it more.
And she's not alone.
And I remember these streetcars when they were still brand new when I was a boy growing up in Mississauga. And the old at the time were these PCC streetcars, which were withdrawn from service in 1995.
As for these streetcars, one will be refurbished, kept in storage, and brought out for special events, while the other one will be taken apart for parts. In the driver's seat, it's all smiles from Stephen Welch, but the end is stirring up some mixed emotions.
Bittersweet for sure. It's an amazing car. I am definitely going to miss operating them, and it's just cool driving something that bends in the middle.
The cool factor sure isn't lost on this crowd. Just take a look at this jam-packed final ride.
I'm surprised I'm not the only streetcar nerd in Toronto. Like, talking to this guy here, everyone here is streetcar nerds. It's awesome.
Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
We had our project archaeologists confirm that in fact they were horse bones, so that we didn't need to call the police or the coroner.
Well, uncovering pieces of Toronto's past while building the future of transit. Coming up, we will dig into the history of our city after the break. Construction of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT is unearthing pieces of Toronto's past. Artifacts, some as old as 5,000 years, have been unearthed in Midtown Toronto. Lisa Shing tells us what the objects are able to teach us about the area.
And they found what looked like some bones.
Bones that were found at the Fairbank site at Dufferin and Eglinton. They also found a horse hoof, a cow pelvis. When the crew finds something, work stops. They call this man, who then calls the project archaeologist to see if police need to be called in.
We had our project archaeologists confirm that in fact they were horse bones, so that we didn't need to call the police or the coroner. There was an old dumping pit.
That dumping pit over at the Kennedy site had various glass bottles and pottery from an old farm in the area before it was developed.
These are definitely all pretty cool.
The most significant find, a 5,000-year-old hunting camp, including ceramics and stone tools.
And they were all cataloged. There was over 2,800 found. They were cataloged and stored.
Heritage Toronto's Caitlin Wainwright says the artifacts tell a story.
It also is a chance to reflect and say, okay, what other histories have been lost over time, and where might there have been other human activity?
The work won't be finished for a few years yet. After several delays, Metrolink says the final project should be complete by fall of 2021. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
I wonder if they'll put any of those artifacts on display in one of the stations. Well, it's been 10 years since a fire almost shut down the Chapmans Ice Cream factory in Grey County. But the community came together to save it, and its owners vowed to repay that help. As Philip Lishanek tells us, it's a story with a sweet ending, both for the town, the community, and the family.
They're up in the rafters welding, and a spark lit it up, and we couldn't stop it.
The plan was to expand the more than a century-old wooden building that served as home to Chapman's Ice Cream since 1973.
And I thought, we'll be all right. There's cold storage, there's lots of ice, it's very cold. There's ice cream in there, it'll put out the fire. Oh no.
1 out of every 3 people in the town of 1,400 worked there. Many remember seeing billowing smoke over the town as the factory burned to the ground.
Watching to see what's going to happen, wondering what will happen to this town if we lose, such a big employer.
Now, some business owners would be tempted to pack it all in after such a catastrophe, but the Chapman story is taught in business schools as a case study in not only how to survive after a disaster, but thrive in the aftermath.
I mean, there just was not a moment's hesitation of, we won't quit. We will carry on for our people, the town, everything else.
The family says now, looking back, they made some smart decisions. They had business interruption insurance and enough inventory to keep them going while they rebuilt. But they also had plain good luck.
I was going through the mail, and there's a flyer that said, fire sale of an ice cream factory in Florida. Big, huge, gigantic factory. So it was just this weird kind of coincidence.
Within 7 weeks, Chapman's was producing ice cream again, and no one missed a single paycheck. Today, the new plant, called Phoenix, is the heart of an expanded facility employing twice as many people. Strolling the shop floor, Ashley Chapman knows most of them by name. He says 10 years ago, after the family recipes were destroyed in the fire, it was the mix masters on the shop floor who knew all of them by heart.
And that's why, as a company, then and now, we believe that people are the strongest thing that a company has, and you got to treat them well.
And Chapman's has given back to the community, donating millions to hospitals, sports facilities, and schools, because the family knows its success is rooted in this community. Phil Bishenok, CBC News, Markdale, Ontario.
Well, if you've been around Allan Gardens this summer, you may have noticed the colorful banners on display. They've been designed by 15 Indigenous women artists, and they're part of a memorial honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
A lot of these Indigenous artists, a lot of Indigenous people came together to create something so beautiful. We thought it was important to show the past and where we sort of came from, the kind of harmful effects that colonizers had.
Some people do find the history to be a little in your face sometimes, but I think that's important. And really what it is, and I think about this installation, is to spark conversations.
And then to come into the park, there seems to be a different energy now in this park. And I love watching everybody just take their time, looking at each of the banners. They're absorbing the memorial to the missing and murdered, but they're also, they're just feeling so positive about Allan Gardens, and that was really our intent.
Recognizing our history and our experiences, because historically we haven't had these opportunities. It's really about that recognition that we have a space, we have a place here. And really it's a recognition of the roots of the place.
We wanted to create an act of civic beauty, but also create a memorial to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. So you have deer hide, moose hide, you have the smell of smoke, smoked hides, you have the jingles that move in the wind, you have the ribbons, we have roadkill bones. There's such an amazing orchestra of sounds and texture.
It's kind of just like a great reminder of what we wanted to represent, and seeing people stop and take pictures, it's kind of just validates that, and they'll pass along whatever they get from these banners as well.
It's a big night on the court for Bianca Andreescu. The GTA teen has a chance to reach the semifinals at the U.S. Open. Of highlights from her match tonight after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
A late start tonight for Bianca Andreescu at the U.S. Open, playing American Taylor Townsend. At stake, a spot in the quarterfinal tonight. Andreescu taking the first set, dominating 6-1. The second set is just now underway. Earlier today was the Labor Day Classic in Hamilton. The Argos still looking for win number 2 this season. Ticats up to an early lead. This is quarterback Dane Evans actually running the ball into the end zone himself. But Toronto would respond on the very first play of the game. McLeod Bethel Thompson, watch this throw. A 96-yard bomb to Darrell Walker. He runs it in for a touchdown there. Toronto taking the lead in the second. Bethel Thompson again threading the needle to Walker for a 24-yard touchdown. But the Ticats, well, they roar back in the fourth. Jackson Bennett delivering a 24-yard touchdown to help Hamilton regain the lead. They'd go on to take the Labor Day grudge match 38-27, extending their CFL leading record to 9-2. Well, nice weather for the Blue Jays in Atlanta today, but they felt the bringer of rain. Bottom of the first, Josh Donaldson crushes his 34th home run of the season to give Atlanta an early lead over his former team. Well, they would double that lead in the third. Dansby Swanson hits one to Brandon Drury at third. He ends up kicking it into no man's land. The error scores 2 more. The Jays pick up a couple of runs, but they end up losing this one today, 6-3. Nick Cernkovich is back with his extended forecast. You know, Nick, it's sort of the unofficial end of summer with Labor Day, but it really hasn't felt like summer the last couple days.
No, it hasn't, and my wife constantly reminds me of that. What can I say? Temperatures slowly starting to drop. Now, we're started to feel a little bit of cooler weather moving in over the last couple of days. Tomorrow we'll actually see a bit of a warm up and also a little bit more in the way of humidity, and then it's going to drop again slightly below seasonal over the next 5 days or so. We'll talk about the rainfall first, and then we'll get to the temperatures. There's a look at the forecast map. Now, as we move through tonight, the risk for a few fog patches or at least some mist. Tomorrow morning, a cloudy start to the day, a bit cooler as well, about 12 degrees through the early morning hours. May see a few spotty showers through the afternoon, but not much to speak of in terms of rain. It's not until about 9-10 p.m. tomorrow where this line starts to move through the GTA earlier to the north, and that's going to bring with it some good rainfall and thunderstorms through tomorrow night. By Wednesday morning, maybe a few lingering showers, but otherwise just cloudy, and by Wednesday evening, things start to clear out, and we're back into the sunshine or clear skies once again. In terms of how much you can expect with this, broadly speaking, for the city of Toronto, could be as much as about 15 to 20 millimeters of rain. But again, we're talking about thunderstorms, which means that locally you're going to see big differences in terms of the rainfall. But this is generally the forecast here. So 10 to 20 millimeters possible starting tomorrow night. Temperature-wise, today wasn't too bad, 25 degrees. That's a little bit above seasonal, but it is starting to come down. Southwestern Ontario this evening down to 13 degrees, and then by tomorrow afternoon, generally cloudy skies, highs to about 28 degrees. Warmer down here. The risk for a few afternoon showers, but really it's the evening thunderstorms we're talking about. Golden Horseshoe, though, cooler. 12 degrees through the overnight, so that's pretty much the same. But as we move through tomorrow afternoon, 23, 24 degrees. And again, same story. The risk for a few spotty showers, but really it's that evening and overnight thunder. Then we get into the next 5 days, and it looks like this. Wednesday, it's windy. Cloud cover starts to clear out there. Thursday, 21 degrees. The average, by the way, about 24 degrees for this time of year. And we sort of sit around 20, 21 degrees into Friday and Saturday. And look at those overnight lows. Temperatures into the single digits on some nights. Mike.
Oh, boy. Okay, thanks a lot, Nick.
You're welcome.
Well, forget what the calendar says. When the last patrons exit the CNE and the fair closes its doors, you know the summer is officially at an end.
It was awesome. A lot of people, good food, turkey legs like this big. Oh my goodness.
We had one turkey leg between the two of us. It was delicious. Ended up selling out completely on our rice balls, and we have none left.
I'm in grade 3.
So shouldn't you be in bed right now?
Yeah.
It's wonderful because just before going back to school for the kids, they're gonna have great fun here, and it's wonderful.
We loved it. And she loves the pickled pizza. Was it better than last year? I think so. Why is that? Because I can't remember last year.
Families enjoying one last hurrah, taking the food, games, and the midway prizes. The CNE closed the Princess Gates just a few hours ago. Officials estimate this year's event drew crowds of close to 1.5 million people. That's up from last year. Well, that's our newscast for tonight. One big programming notice to tell you about. Our colleagues at the National will be live in Mississauga tomorrow night, part of a look at issues that could sway who forms the next federal government. And co-host Rosemary Barton will be on Metro Morning with Matt Galloway to talk about it tomorrow, just after 8 a.m. Have a great night. Good night.